Hey everyone, Ryan here, and in this video I wanted to count down and discuss what I believe are the 10 most controversial LEGO Star Wars set releases of all time. This video is partly inspired by the recent controversial summer 2025 wave, as well as the $1,000 Death Star slice that everybody's been hating on. We're going to start out with an honorable mention in the 2012 Jabba's Palace, just so happens to be on the shelf behind me today, and this one wasn't necessarily controversial within the LEGO Star Wars community for many of the reasons that we'll find our actual top 10 to be. This one was controversial specifically with a Turkish group in Austria who claimed the set was racist. They posted this diagram to explain some of the gripes they had with the set, but the real reason I'm mentioning this here is, again, how mainstream it went. It was on websites like NBC. Like, just insane for a LEGO Star Wars controversy to break into that level of mainstream. LEGO themselves then responded saying the model in question is not based on any real building, but rather depicts a fictional scene of Jabba's palace on the planet Tatooine from Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And then they basically said, I'm sorry you feel that way, with, quote, the company regrets that the group has misinterpreted what the LEGO Star Wars set depicts, which I think is very funny. And then months later, when the set was retiring as originally planned at the end of 2013, it would have been a very normal shelf life for a LEGO Star Wars set at the time of about a year and a half. The group apparently claimed to have met up with LEGO executives in Munich, where LEGO apparently said they would discontinue the set starting in 2014. And so LEGO then again responded by saying it is not correct that the discontinuation of the product is related in any way to the community's criticism. And so that is the very wild 2012 Jabba's Palace controversy. And kind of interestingly, when they came around to making the build again with the 2022 Boba Fett's palace, they made the roof noticeably flatter, which makes me wonder if they were doing it to avoid any more controversy of people saying it looked like other buildings or something, because it definitely isn't supposed to be that flat. Regardless of whether it actually had an effect on the 2022 set's design, it will always be in the back of my head as a real possibility that LEGO kind of watered down that set to avoid it being too good like 2012 was, apparently, because the 2003 version certainly didn't garner any of that negative attention either. I mean, it hardly looks like Jabba's Palace, so fair. But anyway, I just always thought it was so crazy that that one was so mainstream, making it onto websites like NBC. For a LEGO Star Wars set, I think that's pretty cool. Maybe for the wrong reasons this time, though. At number 10 from 2016, I've got the Ultimate Collector Series Assault on Hoth. And two of the biggest controversies with this set come from just the name. Ultimate Collector Series and the word assault. This set was no assault on Hoth. It was known as the Assault on Your Wallet. And honestly, the price wasn't that absurd at $250 for 2,144 pieces. People always say LEGO Star Wars sets are overpriced, and they always will. And so, yeah, Assault on Your Wallet kind of became a meme. Anyways, the actual reason calling it Assault on Hoth was silly was because there were only two snowtroopers included. One of them came with a speeder bike, the other one came with an E-Web blaster, and that was the entire Assault on Hoth to go up against the entire Rebel base and the snow speeder and all of the Rebel troopers. Like, how could they call that an Assault on Hoth, right? It feels like if it were an Imperial pack, maybe you could call it an Assault on Hoth without having so many Rebels, but doing it the other way around didn't really work out. You add on to that the fact that the AT-AT that came out in 2014 had been retired by the time this set came out. It made it even more awkward to buy the UCS Assault on Hoth. But that wasn't really how it was supposed to be, because this set was actually delayed for about a year. I think the designer has since said this, and it was leaked like well over a year before its release through a Lego.com like animated video. And so we kind of knew something was up when the set didn't come out for over a year after that. And so with the intention being to have the AT-AT on shelves side by side with the Assault on Hoth and then not having that happen, yeah, that obviously would not be good either. Using the UCS name and badge was also seen as something not so great with this Hoth playset. Firstly, because it was a playset before it was a UCS set. Like, if it's gonna be a UCS set, it has to be the best version of everything, and it wasn't. The Snowspeeder, for example, was indistinguishable from what would be your normal Snowspeeder playset at the time. The Ion Cannon, while quite beautiful from some angles, had a completely open and ugly backside where you could see all of the colors inside. That definitely doesn't scream UCS to me. With the Wampa Cave, you couldn't actually fit the Wampa through the front of the cave. Like, how does that make any sense for a UCS set or even a normal playset? Whether it's UCS or not, I think that would be silly, but certainly in a UCS set, pretty insane. And then we have what I think is the worst of them all in the shield generator, only having 3 of the 4 actual generator sections. Like, pretty insane to not have that detail correct. They would later get this right in 2019 with their action battle set, though, so at least the criticism was heard, I suppose. Now, for all those reasons, this set was extremely controversial at the time of its release. Of course, they had made big play sets before and would continue to make big play sets after, but starting a couple years later with the betrayal at Cloud City, and I think solely because of this set. They started using the Master Builder Series term for bigger play sets that didn't necessarily feel like they belonged under the UCS moniker. Now at number 9, I've got another one from 2016 in the UCS Death Star refresh. Not quite a re-release because they changed up the minifigs and slightly changed some aspects of the build, and not quite a remake because I wouldn't say they like completely redid it from the ground up in the way that you would think of a remake of like the TIE Bomber. It was very much a refresh. Maybe like an iPhone S series would be the best analogy to have for that, even though they don't really do those anymore. And so part of the controversy here was that there had of course been rumors of a new UCS Death Star for 2016, and many fans rightfully thought that that would mean a new paneled Death Star, something more akin to 2005, because the 2008 version had just retired a year or two prior, and they rarely did refreshes. There had been but a couple examples of refresh sets in the history of LEGO Star Wars, and certainly no one was expecting them to refresh one of their most expensive and longest running sets right after it had just retired about a year prior. So many people rightfully thought we would be getting a fresh new take on a UCS Death Star, and I still remember the day it leaked. I was actually on the back porch of my childhood home as I stared at the picture of this box in a Lego store on a forum and like just reading all the comments of people being upset about it. And yeah, it was a rough leak that day, I'd say. So with this refresh, the price went from $400 to $500, and if you adjusted for inflation from 2008 to 2016, you would only be seeing a $50 price increase. So Lego just doubled the price increase for some reason, I guess because it must have cost them so much more to make higher quality minifigs, which, don't get me wrong, was nice. It's certainly the silver lining about them having re-released that set, is that they did get much nicer minifigs that brought it into the modern era. The build, unfortunately, was left behind. The Vader's TIE Fighter got a little bit better. I think there were some small aspects of the build that changed, some sticker updates, but generally the build is still very much a 2008 build released in 2016 and then remained on shelves into the 2020s. You could buy a 2008 quality build in 2020, and that was just wild. I think they should have had a little better foresight there and not done that. They should have made this build much better than it was in 2016 because they had that opportunity. Obviously, it was, I think, a prime example of being lazy and resting on your laurels and being like, it'll sell anyway, so we'll just keep selling the same product with some updated figures. And I mean, frankly, it did. It worked well for them, I'm sure, but that doesn't avoid the controversy of it and it being cheap and lazy. So that one, in my mind, always took away what could have been a very nice new UCS Death Star, and I knew when that came out that we wouldn't be getting one for quite some time, and well, that time came this year. We're getting to that, don't worry. Now, moving on to number 8, we go to the 2021 Boba Fett Starship. Technically, this one could be controversial because its minifigs just aren't that good, with the Boba Fett having the wrong color helmet and the Mandalorian having a really ugly helmet print design, but that's not really it. It could also be controversial for its downsizing compared to previous Slave 1 models. It was much smaller than most other Slave 1s, other than like the original from 2000 and the version from the Master Builder Series Cloud City in 2018, but that wasn't really it either, and it also wasn't the $50 price tag at the time. That didn't seem like heinous, I would say. It was the name, Boba Fett Starship, and it may strike many people as odd that that would be controversial, of course, because they call many things in the LEGO Star Wars universe different names from time to time. But every prior Boba Fett Starship to this point had been called the Slave 1. 2000, 2006, 2010, 2019, and every micro version and mini version in between, it had just been called the Slave 1. And all of a sudden in 2021, they've switched over to Boba Fett Starship. And for many fans, this was them changing the name of the Slave 1. And to this day in 2025, no product that LEGO or any other company has released has referred to that ship as the Slave 1. It's all been referred to either Boba Fett Starship or, of course, Jango Fett Starship with the recent ones from LEGO. And I think to any rationally minded person, you would see that this is LEGO moving away from the term Slave 1, and it was. They admitted it themselves. The head LEGO Star Wars designer Jens said that Disney asked LEGO not to use the name Slave 1 anymore. It was right there from the very beginning, but for some reason there was this very odd group of people online that defended it tooth and nail and just decided for whatever reason that wasn't the truth, and that LEGO must just be changing the name for better sales and name recognition amongst parents, which makes no sense when you look at a set like the Justifier, which came out the very next summer, and its name was simply the Justifier, not Cad Bane Starship. So calling Boba Fett Starship not the Slave 1, I think has always been the wrong move. It's just always been the name of the ship. But obviously Disney is going to make the rules there, and I suppose to avoid any ounce of controversy like Lego had seen with the 2012 Jabba's Palace going mainstream, they stopped using the name Slave One altogether starting in 2021 with Lego Star Wars. So you won't see that ever again, in my opinion, and it is what it is. At number 7 from 2025, I've got the most expensive battle pack ever with the $45 327th Clone Troopers battle pack. Yeah, $45 for a battle pack. That's about 2.5 times what people consider to be the normal price of battle packs at $20 these days. But the minifigs in it, there's only 7 minifigs. Outrage ensues. As of the recording of this video, the set has a 1.3 star rating on Lego.com, which is just brutal, very close to rock bottom, but not actually rock bottom because there's another set later on this list that is even lower than the 327th battle pack, but we'll get to that, of course. So anyway, the price is not only insane in a vacuum, like $45 is just too much for what you see here, but they released this while the 2024 Clone and Droid battle pack was still on shelves. That one retails for $30, and you get more minifigs in the $30 set. Now, the newer set does have 43 more pieces, but are 43 pieces and 2 less droids worth paying $15 more? I don't think so. So not only is the price simply insane, they had the gall to release it right next to a set that is much more reasonably priced with the same exact concept of clones versus droids in a battle pack. Like, how could they think this would go over well? Aside from the price, though, the set was also controversial for its oversized AT-RT build, the removal of a once leaked Felucia section of the build that just didn't make it into the final product despite the price being sky high, and of course, you can't forget the low-quality Clone Trooper minifigures with their horrible looking helmet warts, the lack of a physical waist cape, and of course they are littered with inaccuracies with their print design, all of which would have been done better had this set been released back in 2014. So all of that combines for what I think is certainly the most controversial battle pack of all time and the 7th most controversial Lego Star Wars set released of all time. Number 6, I've got another one from summer of 2025 with the Republic Juggernaut, aka the clone tiny tank for obvious reasons. Now, this one was controversial partly for what it wasn't in a UT-AT. People had expected for literally 2 decades at this point that whatever Lego Star Wars set came out with Ki-Adi-Mundi, Commander Bakara, and Galactic Marines would be a UT-AT, simply because the only scene those characters are ever seen together in is during Order 66 on Megiddo with a UT-AT on the bridge. And so when it leaked that this was actually going to be a clone turbo tank and not a UT-AT, that was obviously not what people wanted to hear. It definitely needed to be a UT-AT, and they went in the wrong direction. I don't know who's guiding them with a decision like this, but it never should have gotten this far, and it's really unfortunate because it's the type of thing you hype up in your head for literally 2 decades. The Revenge of the Sith anniversary comes around 20 years, and it's just a flop of a set like that. It's like, oh man, we wanted this one thing, and you didn't do it. Why? Now, for everything the set actually is, it's also not that great. That Clone Tiny Tank nickname, not a joke. It is a very small Clone Turbo Tank compared to every other Clone Turbo Tank that we have ever had. Even adjusted for inflation, this one is much smaller for either the same or more money. Like, it's just absurd to me how tiny they made this thing. And that also came at the cost of stability in this case for some reason, because this set falls apart in your hands depending on how you pick it up. Now, you can pick it up in some ways where it won't fall apart, but literally there are ways you pick this set up that you might think could be reasonable or normal, and the set will still just crumble in your hands because there is no like Technic skeleton structure to the set due to its small size, and that's just not great. There were a couple of other things like the sand blue coloring and the position of the cannons on the side of the turbo tank that just didn't make a lot of sense to me given this was supposed to be from Revenge of the Sith. The minifigures, of course, would also unfortunately be another point of controversy as their quality just wasn't high enough for the set. They again lack physical waist capes and just had general inaccuracies throughout for absolutely no reason. And again, these are the types of things that would have been done better 10 years ago. So Lego fans have the right to complain here. And even more so, they have the right to complain because this set is $160 for 813 pieces. That was another big sticking point to a lot of people. That is a lot of money for this clone tiny tank with only 5 minifigures and then 3 throw-in battle droids. Like, why we didn't get more actual figures when the Fortnite battle bus includes a ton more figures for $60 less, doesn't make sense. There's a lot of issues with this set, and overall, I think it will go down as one of the most controversial LEGO Star Wars sets in history. Even as time goes on, I don't think people will look back on this one and be like, oh yeah, it actually wasn't so bad. No, it was that bad. At number 5, I've got the 2020 Nebulon-B frigate. It was a beautiful return to a form factor LEGO Star Wars sets hadn't seen in a decade with the MIDI scale. It was fairly priced at $40. It had beautiful box art, and so you gotta be wondering what gives, what made it so controversial, because nothing about the set itself was controversial at all. It all had to do with the way this set was released. I would say it's the most disastrous release of a LEGO Star Wars set they've ever had. So first off, this set was available in the US only, which immediately makes everybody else very upset. The reason it was US only though was because 2020 was of course the year COVID shut down a lot of the conventions, and this was going to be a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, but because the event didn't happen, LEGO had to release the set, and as well as some other con sets for that year like the Bestman Duel through alternate means. And so the set would have already been very hard to get, and there had been years and years of precedence of Comic-Con and Star Wars Celebration exclusive sets, so it was nothing new. Just what was new obviously was that they weren't doing it at Comic-Con. They were doing it online through Lego.com and Amazon.com. And so in that way, they actually made the set a lot easier for a lot of people to get that weren't actually physically going to go to San Diego Comic-Con. You could get it for retail price on Lego.com or on Amazon.com. But like I said, it was one of the worst run releases in history. And so here's what happened. The set was supposed to release on November 14th, but for some reason on Amazon, about a month prior, you could find like a secret hidden listing of the Nebulon-B frigate. It was listed with a code name. It had a picture that said coming soon. So you didn't really know for sure that it was the Nebulon-B frigate, but you had a pretty dang good idea. And so you could actually buy the set in pretty big quantities. And I think I just bought one at the time myself from Amazon, but like I think some people probably bought more anticipating that it would be something hard to get, but with no guarantees, obviously. Regardless, the point is this set could only be purchased if you were kind of in the know and knew how to find it, or had friends that had already found it and sent you a link and you were willing to take that risk. And so a lot of them got bought up before they even became truly publicly available, which kind of sucks for people that aren't as hardcore fans as maybe myself, right? I can understand that position. Obviously, I was able to get and secure one myself, didn't have an issue, but yeah, if you're on the other side of that, absolutely is going to suck. So then when the actual release date comes around, of course, the set is going to sell out extra fast on Amazon, and it, of course, also sells out on Lego.com, but the problem is they oversold it on Lego.com by a really significant amount. And so there were a lot of angry customers that I saw in my comment sections and sending me emails because I asked for the specific feedback. I was like, guys, if you went through this, let me know. Show me proof if you can so I can send it to Lego. I was trying to be that liaison between the community and the Lego company, which obviously didn't go well because Lego hates me now. But I was trying to do the right thing regardless. But what ended up happening was a lot of people thought they bought the Nebulon-B frigate from Lego.com on the release day and then had their orders canceled out from under them, and they never got it from Lego. Some of them obviously were given some VIP points if they complained or whatever, but that still doesn't replace actually having the really cool Comic-Con set that you wanted. And I think I made a pretty great rant video on it at the time called Lego Ruined It Again. I'll put it with a link in the description below. But what ended up happening because of this particular situation, Lego actually told me they were going to have a meeting because of what was going on in my video. And they, out of that, I believe, came to the decision to no longer do Comic-Con and exclusive type of sets like that because we haven't seen anything since then. They told me we're having this meeting, and then after that we had nothing forever, like at least to this point in 2025. And so I think that was the wrong decision. They basically saw we messed up one time, and so we should never have the opportunity to mess up again, which is the wrong way to live your life, I'd say. You know, you got to keep taking chances, even if unfortunately sometimes it's not going to work out. And I just look at the history of Lego Star Wars and the aura, if you will, around some of the Comic-Con and Star Wars Celebration type of sets that we will never see again. These days we get a Star Wars Celebration tile, and that's it.
That's actually hilarious.
No more cool sets, no more cool figure displays, no more cool multi-packs. Like, there have been so many cool things in the past that we may never see again solely because of this one situation. But I would say that one is mostly controversial because of the fact that so many people had their orders canceled, and I think a lot of people were very upset about that, rightfully so. And of course, Lego's subsequent decision to basically axe any sort of cool Comic-Con exclusive type of set for the future. Like, yeah, that sucks. At number 4, I've got the 2018 First Order AT-ST. I believe there's only ever been one set more clowned on for its core design decisions than this one, and we'll discuss that one coming up. So this one has no head. That's kind of the main issue a lot of people have with it. It literally just feels like an incomplete version of the AT-ST, which if you've seen The Last Jedi, and unfortunately a lot of people have, you would know that, yeah, there is a headless AT-ST at some point in the movie, but it of course does start with a head. So I think it would have made made more sense for this playset to have included the head and it be removable in some sort of very fun way. But unfortunately, they kind of took the cop-out route, and instead of designing something, I would say probably complex, to allow it to have the head that's removable and all that, they just made an AT-ST without a head. Now, a bigger part of the reason this one was clowned on, I would say, was this released right as the 2016 version of the AT-ST from Rogue One was retiring, and that was considered to be the perfect AT-ST at the time, and really to this day, I don't think they've made a better model as of 2025. But that AT-ST was $40 with 449 pieces, and then they released this headless AT-ST for the same exact price, $40, with only 370 pieces. So they took quite a bit out of there and still put it out at the same exact price. And yeah, people were rightfully very upset about that. And this one was just clowned on by the community, still is to this day. It's the butt end of a lot of jokes, and it, rightfully so, I guess. But I have also kind of softened on it a little bit as I've looked back on it. Like, it's not that bad of a set if you think about what it's actually based on from The Last Jedi. It just, yeah, it's missing the head and it costs the same money as the one with the head that was available the day before. Like, that's pretty bad, I'd say. So yeah, one of the most controversial sets of all time, certainly. At number 3, I've got the Captain Rex's Y-Wing Microfighter from 2024. Part of its controversy could be attributed to the low quality of the Captain Rex minifigure included, given it's got very ugly helmet warts, it's missing that physical waist cape that everybody wants, and it's got some inaccuracies in the design, where in the case of the ammo pouch, make it a downright ugly one. The true controversy with this Microfighter, though, was set in motion about a year prior to its release when LEGO dropped the $650 UCS Venator. Included with that set was the first Phase 2 Captain Rex we had seen in a decade. And when fans spent their hard-earned $650 on this one and read through the instruction manuals, or perhaps watched my review of said set, they would have seen a snippet in there that said both minifigures are exclusive to this set, meaning the Captain Rex and Admiral Yularen included should be exclusive to the Venator. I would argue in perpetuity. And certainly that's what LEGO would want you to think when you're buying the set, or potentially thinking about spending $650 on the set, is that I need to buy this so that I can get these two figures. It's part of the reason you would buy the set. There are, of course, people that will argue that in UCS sets, minifigs don't matter, but I mean, it's part of the purchase. It's part of the experience. Minifigs are one of the things that set LEGO apart. They absolutely do matter in every case in which they are included. Why they wouldn't matter suddenly because you're spending more money doesn't really add up to me personally, as someone who loves both builds and figures. Like, they both matter. And so if one thing is off, it's bad, whether it's the build or the fig, right? It doesn't matter which, just it's all part of the whole in-the-box experience. So LEGO tried to spin these minifigures as a true extra incentive to spend all of this extra money if you wanted that Captain Rex, because again, it had been 10 years at that point since they had put out a Captain Rex, and they were like, okay, this version at least of Captain Rex will be exclusive to the Venator. But then LEGO went and released the exact same version of that Captain Rex in the Microfighter. Of course, no fan would expect any Captain Rex to only ever show up in one set. Of course, people expected Captain Rex to be in other sets, but for LEGO to explicitly call it exclusive and then 7 months later make it not exclusive, but never, of course, change the instruction manual that's lying to you the whole time. Like, it rubs me and many other fans the wrong way. Part of the controversy also, of course, is that there are many fans willing and able to defend the multi-billion-dollar corporation that's lying to its fans that are spending their hard-earned money on the more expensive sets, you know? And that's a really wild part of it, too, is that there's just so many LEGO shills out there that are ready to defend LEGO for even, like, a simple lie like that. It's just super simple, where LEGO could have avoided all of the controversy by simply not calling the figures exclusive, because if they weren't said to be exclusive, nobody would have the expectation of exclusivity, therefore no controversy. But instead, LEGO created their own problem here. And it's not the first time that LEGO has called a minifig exclusive and then released it in a set later on, but it is certainly far and away the most expensive set that they have ever done something like that with. I would also argue it's very different than the previous times LEGO did it, because LEGO now owns its own secondary market. They are keenly aware of what the word exclusive can mean to people and how it will influence their purchasing decisions, and what it could mean for the prices on the secondary market. And when figures sell on bricklink.com, which LEGO owns, they of course get a percentage of that sale. So if the figure is worth more money, it sells for more money. LEGO makes more money from the resale of that figure when people buy the set from them. It's all one big circle. And so I am really cool with exclusive minifigures and expensive sets. I'm also okay with them not making every figure in an expensive set exclusive. I just think you can't lie to your fans. That's what it really breaks down to me as. I mean, you can lie to your fans, sure, whatever. I can tell you right now that I'm 7 feet tall. Doesn't hurt anyone. What does hurt people is when you lie to them when money's on the line, when it does matter, like they are making a purchasing decision and being lied to while making that purchasing decision. I just think that's wrong. I know saying lying is bad ruffles a lot of feathers out there for some reason, but that is Also, another reason the controversy is just so big around this set. Just for some reason, people just refuse to grasp the concept that someone could be upset they got lied to. It's wild out there. And I think this set and its controversy have had some pretty big impacts within the LEGO Star Wars community over the past couple of years, as well as decisions for LEGO. Within instruction manuals since this set, they haven't called any other minifigs exclusive. You know, they have learned that lesson. Obviously, that doesn't mean that there won't and can't be exclusive minifigures and expensive sets, but it does mean that LEGO is at least making some sort of effort, in my opinion, to not blatantly lie to their paying customers and influencing people to spend their money in very shady ways. Like, they don't have to resort to that. People will buy the set, but having to like say, oh, it's exclusive and then pull the rug out from under them feels dirty, because it is. At number 2, I've got the 2025 UCS Death Star, and frankly, it may be controversial to put this at number 2 and not number 1, but I feel like number 1 is really dang controversial too. That's why it's number 1. Anyway, we're getting there. The Death Star has 3 things that I think make it particularly controversial. First off, got the $1,000 price tag, both the most expensive LEGO set ever and the first one, at least in US dollars, to break through that $1,000 mark, and that's a big mark. You know, that's 4 digits instead of 3. A lot of people saw that as a big point in time, and it certainly did end up being a big moment in history for LEGO Star Wars. A lot of people view it as a point of no return, and a lot of complaints came in about this set, about its price specifically, I think because it's $1,000. I think if it was 10% less of a Death Star and 10% less price, you know, equal across the board, it was $900, nobody would really be complaining about the price. I think the price is actually fair for the amount of stuff you're getting, which is a crazy thing to say, perhaps more controversial than anything on this list. But I really think the price is generally okay. Like, it's a really big set with a lot of figures, a lot of stuff went into it, and I just look at it compared to other sets around the same price point, and I'm like, yeah, that seems about right to me. You know, it definitely is a big shock to the system at $1,000. So it is controversial, certainly, for that reason. The other piece of controversy is perhaps the biggest part of it, and that would be the slice. The fact that it's not actually a full sphere. You see, there had been a rumored $1,000 Death Star for like 6 months of 2025 before people found out the design of the Death Star wouldn't actually be what they expected. And that, understandably, didn't go over well because it has been 20 years since we have had a spherical paneled Death Star. And no, the May 4th promo doesn't count. I'm just strictly talking about like UCS level Death Star. And people very logically expected a return to a design like that, perhaps paneled with an interior, but again, that didn't happen. LEGO's design really did shock the world. People have gone crazy with the memes on this one. The Death Slice has definitely been the most prevalent nickname for this one, and rightfully so. It is quite literally a slice of the Death Star. It's a cutaway. You see a bunch of scenes inside, and I personally think it's a positive. Like, I think the design actually worked out well, but that's not what this video is about. It's not about the positives of any of these sets. All of the sets that I've talked about to this point have positive attributes. The point is, it's been very controversial the way they designed this set. The slice was, in many people's opinions, the wrong way to go because they wanted a full-on sphere for the price. It has that premium price, but it doesn't have the premium complete Death Star feel, and like, I can understand that point of view, certainly. So the slice aspect definitely has proven to be a very controversial one, and then the final bit on this, which is probably what I care about the most, is the minifigures not being where they should for the $1,000 price and the UCS name. You've got about 6 or 7 figures in this set that either needed arm printing or dual molded legs. Like, one of the Imperial crew members in a previous UCS Imperial Star Destroyer got arm printing, but in this UCS Death Star, which costs more, he doesn't get arm printing. And then for a bunch of the other figures, they really needed dual molded legs. Like C-3PO didn't get a dual molded leg in this set, but in sets as cheap as the $6 keychain or $140 C-3PO build or $240 UCS Luke's Landspeeder, those all got the dual molded leg version of C-3PO. But this $1,000 set that includes C-3PO doesn't get that highest quality version of C-3PO. The same can also be said for a lot of the Imperial officers that lack dual molded legs, despite previous Imperial officers in UCS sets receiving dual molded legs properly. Like, you've made your most expensive set ever. It's got the UCS name on there. There's no way around it. Everything in it should be the highest possible quality, and it's not. You know, the minifigs were very easy slam dunks for them if they just would have thrown in some dual molded legs. That would have cost them $5 for the entire set of cost, if that. That's probably being super generous on my end. But, you know, in my opinion, just make the set $1,005 and call it good, and then everybody can have what they want, and it's not a problem. But instead, you're being cheap to the tune of saving pennies, you know? It just didn't make any sense to me. It should surprise nobody that the LEGO Star Wars minifigure designer defended this by saying adding that cost to a figure that might need to appear in a much smaller and cheaper set like C-3PO is not necessarily an option. Going on to say that they had to prioritize certain things, of which seems to be unique faces for stormtroopers and random Imperial crew members that you actually never see on the Death Star in the original trilogy. So they just made up a bunch of stuff to put on the Death Star and prioritize resources towards that you both never see. And literally, like, if you display the set for the Stormtroopers specifically because they have the helmets on, you never even see the physical Lego head. They literally prioritize giving a bunch of these characters new faces and stuff that you never see over giving dual molded legs to figures. And that is certainly a controversial decision in my opinion. And I would just say, frankly, the flat out wrong decision. It's a UCS set. You should be giving the best, most accurate things you can to the movie, not just random character faces that you never saw. Lego Star Wars today. I mean, their slogan after all is only the best is good enough. And that will lead us into what I believe is the most controversial Lego Star Wars set release of all time with the 2021 UCS Republic Gunship. So a little backstory I think is very important here. This set was the winner of a LEGO Ideas fan vote that ended in early 2020 between it, the Nebulon-B frigate, and the TIE Bomber. Of course, the gunship won in a landslide, and part of that voting process included a section asking fans which minifigures they would like to see in this UCS Republic Gunship. I and many others then campaigned for the sets and minifigs that we wanted to see. The gunship gang showed out strong, and the gunship won by a landslide. So that's kind of the SparkNotes version of how this set came to be. And so when the set then got revealed, the minifigures were the first big point of controversy. They included a clone commander and Mace Windu. Both of these are very normal, standard Episode 2 Attack of the Clones characters that certainly could and do belong in a UCS Republic Gunship, but given the fact that LEGO had asked fans which minifigs they wanted to see, and fans certainly did answer, they weren't what fans had been asking for. Fans were specifically asking for Jedi Bob and a Phase 2 Commander Cody to make appearances in this set, both of which could have been completely appropriate given that Jedi Bob's sole appearance to this point was in the 2002 Republic Gunship, and given it would be a fan-voted set, yeah, you could have a fan-voted minifigure like a Jedi Bob in this set for fun as a little extra thing, as a bonus, if you will. And then Commander Cody would also work because Commander Cody uses Republic Gunships. He's a clone trooper. You can see him in Revenge of the Sith right next to a Republic Gunship. So it wouldn't be out of the question to include minifigures like that in a UCS Republic Gunship. But LEGO, of course, saw this is what the fans want and said, oh, we can't have that. We should spit in their faces instead. So they then made a really ridiculous statement that minifigs are just a bonus, on top of the fact that, like, I'm a paying customer, and part of what I'm paying for is the minifig, and it's part of what I care about, and therefore it's not just a bonus to me or any of the other paying customers out there that consider it to be like an important part of their purchasing decision. And on top of the fact that you didn't start including minifigs and UCS sets because it wasn't helping them sell, like, they definitely help you sell UCS sets, that's why you're doing it. They also originally asked what minifigs people wanted in the UCS Gunship. So if it was just a bonus, why not have made it a bonus from the very beginning and considered it that way as a big surprise? Be like, hey, we're going to include some bonus minifigs, get excited. You know, that's not how it's ever been worded, but only because they asked people what they wanted and then didn't give them what they wanted. And now they're trying to find some random excuse calling it a bonus. Even more fuel was added to the fire when the designer of the set said that the clone commander included in the set could double as a pilot.
One is a clone commander, which also doubles as the pilot of the ship.
Notably, the accurate clone pilot for the UCS Gunship, not included in this set, would have made a lot of sense to include instead of that clone commander. Like, pretty wild stuff, and it set me and a lot of other fans off. We were very upset about that. But that wasn't even all of it. It wasn't just the minifigures. You know, this was the first prequel UCS set in 11 years in 2021. Not only that, but to get that UCS set, us fans had to campaign and vote it into existence. Like, it wasn't just handed to us like all of the original trilogy UCS sets for the last decade had been, right? This was one that we felt like we had to earn as a community. And so when the designer interview came out, they said the most insane thing. He called a prequel trilogy UCS set a set from the original trilogy. Roll the clip.
The Republic Gunship is a set from the original trilogy.
Where are you going? You've probably seen that clip. Obviously, looking back on it, it's a good laugh. But it is certainly very controversial to say that to your paying customers with your first prequel UCS set in over a decade. It didn't go over well. It didn't go over well at all. Did I mention they put the Imperial logo on the box too? Yeah, all of that other stuff happened, and then they also put the Imperial logo on the box. This was later changed, of course, to the Republic logo when they realized their mistake. But again, first prequel UCS set in over a decade. Fans have been clamoring for this to come back for quite a while. They had to vote it and earn its way into existence. And they just did everything they could to spit in the face of the consumer. on top of releasing that clone commander in 2 more sets, the one that doubles as a pilot, he didn't remain exclusive to the UCS Gunship because the designer believed minifigures shouldn't be exclusive to expensive sets, despite there being tons of precedents before, during, and after that particular set of there being exclusive minifigs in expensive sets. They did everything they could to upset people with it. It was really sad to see, and it's still sad to think about just how awful that whole thing was run and how easy it could have been fixed with someone that actually cared in charge of it. But unfortunately, they didn't have that, and probably still don't. You can see with a lot of stuff they do modern day, they really don't have people that truly care in charge of a lot of things. It's kind of crazy. It feels like they did anything and everything they could to make people hate that UCS Republic gunship, other than actually making a good gunship, because I think they succeeded with that. But anyway, that is my list of the 10 most controversial LEGO Star Wars set releases of all time. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did I miss any? Were there some that deserve to be here that I didn't have in the list? I'm kind of curious what people think. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button, and this outro doubles as a promotion for MandRshop.com or something.